Hey, good morning, Saturday morning, seventh graders. I said I'd try to get a video up for you today, so I came in to get that done. So now we're going to go on to the battles of the Civil War, and we're going to start out with the early years of the war. The early years of the war didn't go well for the Union, and we're going to figure out why, and we're going to look at some of those key battles today. So our key questions today are what new technologies were created during the Civil War. So we're going to learn about some of the new technologies that made this war super deadly. Question two, where was the first battle of the Civil War and what happened in it? Question three, what was the focus of the North in the early years of the war? And question four, how did the South win the Battle of Antietam and what was the result of this battle? So those are our key questions that we need to know about today. Go ahead and, if you need to, pause and write those down, and let's continue on. So, new technology. The Civil War was the first real war that was fought using new technology. Before this, it was like single shot guns, cannons, and swords. And this is the first war that's really going to up the game on that and make things really deadly for everybody participating in the war. So, there were new rifles and cannons that were created that had a greater range than previous weapons, which made the war deadly. Okay, so we have this cannon here. You can kind of see it doesn't look that big, but it packs a punch. We had the revolvers, which are the repeating revolvers that would hold more than one shot. They actually held up to six. And we had ironclads, and they were an improvement over older wooden ships. If you can't figure it out, ironclads means basically they're boats covered in iron, which made them pretty hard to sink. That's one of the ironclads there. And then we also had the submarines. That's the USS Hunley. That was discovered in South Carolina here a few years back. So the Civil War, they actually used submarines during it as well. The first battle of the Civil War. Okay, we learned about the strengths and weaknesses last class, and we're going to figure out how those strengths and weaknesses are going to play out when it comes down to really fighting the war. So the first battle of Manassas, or the first battle of Bull Run, is the first battle we're going to talk about today. And this is the first battle of the Civil War. Okay, the battle was fought July 21st, 1861, in a place called Manassas Junction, Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. Okay, the military leaders. You had a general named P.G.T. Beauregard and Stonewall Jackson leading the Confederates. That's actually Thomas Jackson. He's going to earn the name Stonewall at this battle. PGT stands for Pierre Gustave Toussaint Beauregard. So he has some French ancestry to him. For the Union, a general named Irvin McDowell led the Union. The outcome of this battle. Okay, Northerners showed up to picnic and watch the battle because they thought they were going to see a show, and they did see a show. As the Union came in, fought pretty well early on, but as more Confederate troops arrived, they began to rout the Union, and the Confederates defeat the Union in the first battle of the Civil War. And this shocked the North, and the North just figured out that they would roll through and take out the Confederates with ease, and they figured out this is going to be a long and difficult war. So, give you an idea where it was fought at: Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, right here. First Battle of Bull Run, right here. And the Confederate capital of Richmond, right here. This is some pictures of the battle. This is Stonewall Jackson, basically urging his troops on in the battle. P.G.T. Beauregard, the Confederate general. And finally, we got Irvin McDowell, the Union general. So those are the key players in this battle. And once again, first Battle of Bull Run was a Union victory. Now, you'll want to write this down in the blank space at the bottom of your note page. Everybody understand that? Okay. Next battle we have are Forts Henry and Donelson. These take place in February 1862, and this was basically the battle for the West. Now, the West is basically going to be cut off by the Mississippi River. The military leaders, we have Ulysses S. Grant, and you're also going to want to write in there Albert Sidney Johnston. He was the military leader for the Confederates. And in these battles, the outcome, the Union takes control of two water routes into the Western Confederacy. So if we look at it here, we got the Mississippi River. This is Tennessee. And you have Ulysses S. Grant and his army up here. And they're going to start working their way down, take control of the Cumberland River. And they're going to begin their steps to basically take control of the Mississippi River and cut the South off. Albert Sidney Johnston is up here, works his way down here, and they're going to meet here at the Battle of Shiloh. We'll talk about that one coming up next. So here's the Ulysses S. Grant over here riding his horse. This is the Battle of Fort Henry. There's Ulysses S. Grant during the what he looked like during this battle. And there's Albert Sidney Johnston, okay, which we talked about earlier. He was one of the Union generals that left and joined the Confederacy. We have the Monitor versus the Merrimac, Battle of Ironclads. So you have the two ironclad ships that fought out off the coast of Virginia. There's a comparison of the two so you can see them. The bigger ship here is the Confederate ship, the Merrimac, or the USS Virginia, and this is the Monitor of the Union. Okay, basically these two fought to basically a stalemate. No real victory here, but it showed that ironclads would be effective in battle. These took place March 8th, 1862. Numerous ship commanders were the military leaders. The outcome, ironclads are used by the South against the Union blockade. If you remember from last time, we had the snake going around the country of the Union blockade, and they were used by the North to hold the Mississippi River. And that takes us back to the battle in the West with the Battle of Shiloh. Okay, as you saw, Grant was working his way down to Shiloh to control the Mississippi River, and he's going to gain control of some other things here. The event took place April 6, 1862. Small church named Shiloh in Tennessee, and it was a surprise attack by the rebels with the aid of 25,000 troops. So the military leaders, the South was led by Sidney Johnston and P.G.T. Beauregard. The Union was led by Ulysses S. Grant. The outcome, 20,000 soldiers were wounded or killed, including Sidney Johnston. And the most important thing for the Union, they take control of a major railroad center and part of the Mississippi River. The South was stunned by the defeat, described it as too shocking and horrible. And this is to give you an example here. We got Grant's army. Okay, the attack went on, and basically the Confederates were winning, and then Johnston was shot. Once Johnston was shot, P.G.T. Beauregard halted the attack. When he halted the attack, more Union reinforcements arrived, and that basically did them in. Some pictures from the battle, or images that represent the battle. The Battle of New Orleans, April 25th, 1862. This was a focus again of the Union to try to capture the Mississippi River. It was a northern invasion of the South. The military leader was David Farragut, and the outcome was the North controls most of the Mississippi River, almost all of it. They got the entrance controlled, they got the top part of it controlled. So they just got to work their way through and gain control of the middle ground. Battle of New Orleans takes place here. This is an overall showing of how we gain control of the Mississippi River. But Battle of New Orleans happens right here. And there's an image from the United States Naval Archives of the Battle of New Orleans. So it was basically a naval battle. Union defeat at Richmond, which are also known as the 7 Days Battle. This takes place March through June of 1862. Now this was the Union attempt to capture the Confederate capital. So as you can see, the North is really trying to go through and use their strategies to win this war. The military leaders, we're going to have the rebels, the Confederates, led by General Robert E. Lee, and J.E.B. Stuart, his cavalry commander. The Union is going to be led by General George McClellan. After the Battle of Bull Run, Abraham Lincoln fired Irvin McDowell and replaced him with McClellan and told him his goal was to capture Richmond. You're going to find out that Lincoln doesn't take defeat very well, and he's going to fire a lot of generals. The outcome of the battle. The Confederates defeat the Union, and they only lose like one man doing so in most of the major battles. The Union fails in its strategy to capture the Confederate capital, and it disheartens the North. And basically at this point, they feel like they got little hope of winning the war. It also is going to force Lincoln to call on more volunteers to win the war. There's Robert E. Lee and George McClellan. This is the battle for Richmond. So it basically takes place over a series of battles. We got Mechanicsville, Gaines Mill, Savages Station, Fraser's Farm, and Malvern Hill. Over here, just up the way, is Washington, D.C. McClellan worked his way down here and basically tried to attack going this way. Some photos are basically some pictures that represent the Battle of Richmond. And then finally, we're going to finish off today with the Battle of Antietam. Now, this is going to be an important battle in the war. It's going to take place September 17th, 1862 at Antietam Creek, Maryland. It's northwest of Washington, D.C., and it became the bloodiest single-day battle in the war. Basically, what happened was Lee was moving his troops up north to threaten the cities in the north, and while he was going north, apparently one of his generals lost a copy of his battle plan, and he had them wrapped up in some cigars, and apparently they fell out of the saddlebags. Union scouts found those battle plans, and so McClellan knew absolutely everything Lee was going to do. So that's a huge advantage for him here. The military leaders, again, we have McClellan and Robert E. Lee. And the outcome, Lee is forced to stop his invasion of the North. McClellan could have ended the war, but he let Lee and the Confederates escape. Lincoln fires McClellan for this mistake, replaces him with a guy named General Burnside, who we'll learn about coming up. And it's going to lead to the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, the Battle of Antietam is pretty brutal. Single bloodiest day in the battle, or in the war. I think something like 27,000 soldiers are killed. And what it does, it's basically a stalemate. Okay, so neither side really wins this battle, but the Union uses it to their advantage and say they win. And it's going to lead Lincoln to basically use that as a jumping off point for the Emancipation Proclamation, which will change the focus of the war from not only saving the Union to basically ending slavery in the country. And we'll talk about that next class. Here it is here. So the Battle of Antietam happens right up here. Washington right down here. So they work their way up and basically fight it out here. Some photos from Antietam. The bridge is always prominent. You can see actual photos. Unions and Confederates here. And to sum everything up today, so the early battles of the Civil War, you can see that both sides are basically trying to implement their strategies, and both are basically trying to be pretty successful at it. You have Ulysses S. Grant fighting the war in the West. You have numerous Confederate generals fighting the war in the East so far now. You got Robert E. Lee as the main focal point in the battle in the East, and P.G.T. Beauregard fighting out in the West. So if you have any questions, just let me know. We'll talk about this in class as well. We'll have some reading and discussion questions over it. A little bit longer video, but a lot of information. So hope you guys have a good weekend.